Now, did you ever get the urge to take a break from life and walk away from it all? If you're stressed or overwhelmed, the idea of actually slipping away or even starting again as someone completely different probably is all too tempting. Just how easy is it? Or not? Well, our next guest, Christy Daugherty, has done just this. Describing herself as a lifelong runaway, Christy joins us on the show this afternoon. Welcome, Christy.
Thank you.
We have to say now, you've actually settled now, haven't you?
I think I have, yes.
Will you say you think you have? This is it, is it?
I hope so. I've actually bought a house, so at least at this point I'm tied down by the bank for the first time.
So the first time ever you've grown roots.
Yeah.
But just tell me, but before you did buy a house and before you settled down, what was your lifestyle like then?
Well, I've never lived in the same town for more than 5 years. I've never lived in the same house for more than 2. And this isn't a conscious thing. And it's something I really hadn't thought about. It's just the way I was. I was sort of itinerant. I kept on the go. I mean, I graduated from university and moved across country. I grew up in America. So I moved from one side of the country to the other when I was 21. And
I'm going to just stop you there because I was talking to Robert Elms about this. And I said, where would you go, Robert? And he went South America. And you see, here we can drive from John O'Groats to Lanzarote. We're a tiny island, you know, we're limited. And with Europe going the way it is, we can't actually country hop around Europe for much longer.
Indeed.
So we are really limited. In the United States, you can just keep reinventing yourself, can't
you? Absolutely. I mean, it's something that I witnessed as a child because my parents, I was born in Texas. My parents moved to the opposite end of the country when I was 4 to Montana up on the Canadian border. Then their lives sort of fell apart. Their marriage fell apart. And eventually my mother, in the middle of the night, took my brother and I back to Texas after a very difficult situation with my father, where she was fleeing him. It took 2.5 days driving to get from the Canadian border to Houston, where I would then grow up. And so I think maybe having witnessed it, having been part of that at 12, at 11, I just realized that you can run away. You can really do it.
And that's quite, oh gosh, that's for a child that is very unsettling. I mean, as a kid, we were brought back and forth from Australia every 2 years, and it gave me this real sort of, you know, if you set foot in my flat, there is so little stuff that I can be out, packed and away in 5 minutes. Seriously.
Yeah.
I've lived my life like that because I think I lived my life like that as a child, actually.
Yeah.
Do you think that formed the template for how you know, that's a huge disruption as a child, isn't it?
It is, and perhaps it just makes it possible. Perhaps it just makes you realize you don't really need all that stuff. You don't need a 4-bedroom colonial home worth of stuff. I always had enough stuff that would fit in my car. I never had a moving van until, well, maybe once in my life, and it felt indulgent. You know, it was just like if I was moving, I left it. I gave it away, and I hit the road with what would fit in the car.
And how were you working? Where were you doing all different jobs?
I was a journalist, actually.
So that actually fits it quite well, because you can sort of scout your new area. And what were you freelancing? Were you sending stuff to local papers?
Well, exactly. Well, I'll give you an example. I lived for a brief while back in Texas after I left my first job. So my second job was back in Texas in Galveston, and I hated it. And I got fired after 6 months, deservedly, for calling my boss a eunuch. So he was. It's my best firing ever. And so I left in a tizzy, you know, with nowhere to go. And so I thought, I'm going to drive to New Orleans, which is about 7 hours drive away, and I'll decide what to do after I've had 75 beers. This was my thought. I was 23. And so I stopped on the way in Baton Rouge and thought, that's a nice town. Maybe I could work there. So I went to New Orleans. I applied at the newspaper while I was there, spending a week drinking away my troubles. On my way home, I applied for a job at the Baton Rouge newspaper. By the time I got back to Galveston, I had a job offer from the Baton Rouge newspaper. So I moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Well done, you. And do you, I mean, I've only just met you, but you're very amenable. You're very easy to get on with. You obviously are not one of these people that need all the stuff like friends. You know, no, I mean, you could did you make new friends at each place you started and left the old ones behind?
Well, before Facebook, it was really easy to lose track of people. And so I think in those days, I didn't intentionally leave people behind. So there would be letters. But, you know, it kind of, yes, I kind of did. I started anew in every town. Basically, the me in Baton Rouge was not at all the beaten, defeated, fired, angry me from Galveston. I mean, by the time I started, I was like, come together, I can do this, you know, and I'll start fresh here.
And it's, you know, again, I'm going to say, you know, maybe, because sometimes I just think, oh my God, I've become so boring. Because for instance, where I'm living now is the longest I've ever lived anywhere, and I am about to move, but only over the road, so it's no big shift. And I've worked for this radio station longer than I've worked for anywhere before. And I just think, well, where's my get up and go? Where's that? Because the adrenaline kick you get from going into uncharted territories is quite addictive. And I wonder whether you are addicted to that adrenaline of, here we go, going to have to start from scratch. You're nodding. Do you think you were?
Probably. I mean, there is something, I've told my husband before, because I'm married to a British man who has never quite experienced the American phenomenon of having a really bad day and then just getting in your car and leaving that day behind, which most Americans have done at some point or another. I'm going to Florida. So? It's such a thing, the road trip.
Yeah.
It's all our films are about it because...
Well, I don't know if you've been following Bloodline on Netflix, have you?
Yeah,
and spoiler alert, but the second series, one of the characters, it ends with him. It's got so bad, the only way out is to keep driving.
Yeah.
And I just thought, we can't make these films here because you're going to be at the end of the island in a couple of hours, aren't you? But America, you just keep driving.
It is the one thing when people say, I don't miss much about America. I've been here quite a while and I like it here. But one thing I do miss is driving without stopping.
Yeah. So you say to your husband, does he think you're there now forever? Or did you warn him you may well just up sticks and go?
I did warn him, and what he said is, wherever you go, I'll follow.
Oh, my
there's
goodness,
no
how
away.
lovely. That's really... So did you ever put yourself in a situation of uncertainty where you didn't have a job to go to?
When I came to London, yes, that was my first big... It was the craziest thing I ever did. I was breaking up a long-term relationship in New Orleans, and I needed a brand new fresh start. And I had done some work for a British publishing house, and the editor there and I had kind of hit it off. And she said loosely, if you ever come to London, I swear I'll hire you. So based on that, I applied for a visa, got it, went to London, all on my own, showed up more or less on her doorstep.
Did she say, who the hell are you? Would that just be awful?
Not quite. She was really quite lovely, although I imagine she had that wonderful British ability to hide horror. But I had no job to go to, but she did ultimately hire me.
So she did live up to her word.
She did. I still owe her. And that was the beginning.
And so let's just talk about your family and friends then. Who are they? And are they still around? And where are they? Or are they everywhere?
Well, my friends are now everywhere. So I have friends that I made when I first moved to London who now live in Spain or America, or, we are definitely a moving generation. My family is still back in Texas, and I do try to go back. They're none of them like me. I was definitely the footloose one, the black sheep. So most of them are still back in Houston and Dallas, and I try to go once a year to see them.
And are you as fascinated by people? I've got a list here of people who've successfully literally disappeared because that's what they wanted to, and yet society can't deal with it. And let me just name some of these. So on the 11th of April 2016, the children's author Helen Bailey walked away from her home in Royston, Hertfordshire, with her dog Boris, leaving a note for her partner saying that she needed time to herself. She's never been found and she's never returned. She's also never taken anything out of her bank account, which I find quite weird, actually, because unless she'd taken a massive amount of cash with her, unless she's maybe serving tables or something, it is odd, that, isn't it?
It's disturbing.
That's how they'll find you, because they will tap into your bank account. Sinead O'Connor was very recently missing in the US, and amid reports of a bitter custody battle causing fears for her safety, she's spoken openly about her own mental health issues, but she was found soon afterwards. Stephen Fry, of course, and I was the last person to ever interview Stephen Fry, and he was reported missing in the US. Not in the US, actually. I think he went over to Europe. I think he was. This was after leaving his West End show that had opened to poor reviews. He just ran. And then, of course, the very famous Agatha Christie, who disappeared, I think, for 11 days. And I don't know if anyone knew where she went or not, but she just went, I've got to get away. In her days, 1926, you probably could just disappear. Now, it's really tricky, isn't it? Not to leave a whole load of clues behind.
I don't know if I'd want everybody to wonder and be sad about
Yes.
where I was. Like, the Agatha Christie thing did always fascinate me. I mean, she, even as a young person reading about that, it just seemed like a magnificent idea.
Yes.
To just disappear for a while in her situation.
Because she's had didn't her lover two-time her or something?
Yeah,
Wasn't that so?
exactly.
And she just thought, I've just got to get out.
And she was quite famous still. So just wanting to get away and be unknown for a while. I could just, as a child, visualize that as romantic and exotic. As an adult, I never wanted people to feel sad and wonder what happened to me.
No.
That wasn't the idea. The idea was to say, hey, I'm over here. It's a really, really long ways away. If you want to come visit, awesome. Knowing that probably nobody would.
Yes.
And I could have started over by then.
Yes.
So.
It is, okay, you willingly confess that, you suffered a massive heartache and that was a gut reaction is to just go.
Yeah.
But they say, don't they, you take your luggage with you. It's the same blue sky or grey sky. It's the same sky wherever you are.
Yeah.
You're nodding.
I cried on a lot of double-decker buses when I first got here. I didn't get away from the sadness, but it was nice to have a really new environment to be miserable in. And in a way, I think I did get over it faster because there's so many
of survival.
challenges. Yes.
Survival. You've got to fill your head with actually surviving instead of indulging in
You've
your
got to
own
learn
misery.
where you are. You've got to meet new people. You've got to figure out a way, as you say, to get by.
Yeah.
And that uses up that part of your brain that might otherwise just be self-pity.
Yes. So let me just ask this then. Your dad you lost touch with, I should imagine.
For a long time.
But you're in touch with him now?
Well, I did get back in touch with him. He did pass away last year, and by the time he did, we were definitely in touch, but we were never close.
And your mum, do you have any, because this is the other thing, you think, gosh, they're getting old, aren't they? Maybe I should be there. Maybe I've given them a lot of worry. Did you have any guilt like that about her?
It's that difficult trade-off we all have to make, which is my life versus their life. And at a certain point, I couldn't trade my life for theirs. I tried to be there for both of them as much as I could. But at the same time, no, I don't think you can. I think at a certain point you make a decision. I'm going to live this life that I have chosen for myself, and I will be there as much for you as I can, but my life matters too.
And has she never thrown that at you?
Oh, God, yes. Constantly and perpetually.
I can imagine actually. What have you put me through? How is your life now? You live in Surrey. You've got a mortgage, but you have got a husband who says if you leave, I'll come with you. Do you think he's almost anticipating that?
He's the kind of guy who also says, when I was talking about a jailbreak, that he's had a plan to break me out of jail since 2011 and he won't tell me why. So he's just the kind of guy who I think is ready for anything. He gets it, and with me, and the fact that I need to be on the move. And we've kind of conquered that with lots of travel and constant adventures. And my books are published in a lot of countries, so I get to travel a lot for work as well as fun. So I am constantly on the move. I just have a place to go back to now that's familiar.
And what is for your home in Surrey? What is the one thing that you love that is there? Apart from your bloke, but what is? Is it your kettle? Is there something that? I remember when I travelled a lot as an actress, I just always wanted my own kettle. I don't know. I just thought I just need to be able to. That's all. I don't want loads of luxuries, but I really missed being at the mercy of other people making me hot drinks. It's just ridiculous. What is it that you really value in your home that is there in Surrey that isn't part of your travels?
I think for me, the thing is I'm living in a weird way in American fantasy. So we live in a little cottage on a footpath with a castle in our town, and a river runs through this little town where we live, and weeping willows drape over it, and it looks like every American's dream of what England is like, and I've sort of stumbled into that. And so for me, because it doesn't look
but
real.
Is that a fantasy? Are you living a fantasy? Because I hate to put the mockers on this, but this is a really damp, wet, horrible summer, and then we've got the winter, and in that little castle and that twee village, there are dark, long nights. Do you think you might go crazy?
I suppose if I'd grown up here, maybe, but because I grew up in a place where it was 105 degrees every day for 4 months of the year, this is really quite nice.
I really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you. And you publish under the title of C.J. Daugherty, is that right?
I do, yes.
Daugherty spelled Daugherty. Christy, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
So, ever just taken off and managed to disappear for any length of time?